back with us this week, we have Brother Casey Lee to share on Untangle the Tangled. Let's see what he has tangled for us. Over to you, Brother Casey.
Thank you, Brother Terence, for the kind introduction. Happy morning, Namo Buddhaya, brothers and sisters. I thank you for joining me this morning for Dhamma sharing entitled Untangle the Tangled. So you can see from the word, there are the word tangle and the word untangle. So let's look at what we have in the sutta that I'll share this morning. And from there, we will discover some of the things that we as Buddhists that we can practice on a daily basis, what to untangle, in our daily duties as lay practitioners. So before that, let me share the slide. Okay, brothers and sisters, before I do the Dhamma sharing, let's compose our mind to pay homage to our Supreme Teacher, the Buddha, the Blessed One, the Self-Enlightened One. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, this morning, sharing on the topic of Untangle the Tangled. So when I thinking about this topic, the first thing that came to my mind was a very old hymn that I heard as a young student in my days in USM. So let me start off my sharing with look at this fate of a silkworm. So this particular hymn sang by Bhikkhuni Heng Yin in 1980 struck me when I talk about this topic. When the topic came to me, tangling and untangling things. So the simile of a silkworm came to my mind, and I've just taken a small snippet of the hymn that was sang in 1980. I think some of us who are, have been following Dhamma hymns for a long time, those born in the 60s and the early 70s, you may have come across this hymn as well. So in the caption itself, this Bhikkhuni Heng Yin has written a very short paragraph, but beautifully written on the fate of this silkworm. So she said that, watch the silkworm spin. So exactly in our life, we are just like this silkworm, spinning ourselves round and round to make a cocoon. And without realizing that, this is the place that we will soon die in. So with this short kind of simile of a silkworm, so we can imagine our life is like this silkworm that we go spinning and spinning and spinning. So without realizing that we are trapped in this thing that we do on a daily basis. So in the sutta, there are a couple of nice words used by the Buddha to illustrate how the tangle begins. Most of the time, we spend our thinking process in the past or the future, but very seldom that we put our mind at the present moment. So we are tangled in the past or we are tangled in the future, and very seldom we stay at the present moment. So these are the few words that which the Buddha has came up with that we will take a look. All right. So there are few suttas that have referred to, taken from Anguttara Nikaya, 1.82 to Anguttara Nikaya 1.97. So each of that sentence describe one of the things that we do daily which are harmful, and at the same time, the Anguttara Nikaya provide a solution to that as well, which are beneficial habits or habitual habits or behaviors that we practice on a daily level. So let's look at the list of harmful habits which tangle us. Okay, so you can see from the Anguttara Nikaya 1.82, the Anguttara Nikaya 1.97, there's a long list of one item the Buddha says is very harmful to us. So what I've done here is I've collected all the words. And if you look at all these words, from heedlessness, laziness, having many desire or wishes, non-contentment, careless attention, lack of clear comprehension, or even having bad friends, or pursuing bad habits. These are the list of habits or behavior that we engage in without realizing that these are the harmful tangle activities that we practice throughout the day. So it's good for us to know that in our engagement with people or in our daily activities, some of these behaviors that we carry, if we can recognize them, at least once we know that these are harmful habits or harmful behaviors, we can then replace these harmful behaviors with something which are more beneficial. So the Buddha, in this list of sentences, suttas from 182 to 197, provided again a long list of comparative benefits from the one which are harmful. So the Buddha recommended that instead of being negligent in the day-to-day work, let's try to be more diligent. So you can see the word heedlessness. We can then practice heedfulness. If we are drowsy and lazy, not wanting to do something, we can then arouse our body energy. So having too many desires, wishes, we can reduce it by having fewer desires. So same thing with non-contentment, things that we have, we are not contented. We can then look at the contentment side of things to make, having less things, but yet we are pretty happy, careless attention and careful. So this careless attention and careful attention is one of the key reasons why we get entangled. Most of the time when we are drawn to pleasant things or unpleasant things, we pay careless attention to the feeling that arises from the engagement. Yeah. So when there is a contact and a feeling arises, it depends a lot on what attitude we take at that point in time. There is a feeling, so the contact brings about feeling. So the feeling could be pleasant, unpleasant. So if we pay careless attention, so we might be drawn towards wanting more of the pleasant feelings, or we might to reject a feeling which is unpleasant. In opposite, if we take careful attention, we look at the feeling that arises and we are aware there is such a feeling, we become watchful. What is the next course of action? When we apply a break and evaluate a particular action that has a reason, we are putting in a careful attention to the whole thing that we are judging. And same thing with lack of comprehension, not clarity, not sure what is going to happen after this, or taking action, not sure what is going to be the consequence of it. If we have clear comprehension, knowing the consequence of the action we take, then we become more discerning. We become more careful. And having bad friends, we can choose to have good friends. Here, bad friends, good friend means people who encourage us to be walking on the right path, encouraging us to do good things rather than engaging things which are useless and a waste of time. And same goes with pursuing habits, good habits and bad habits. So you can see, in fact, in the sutta, there's a long list of harmful things that we can engage in, which tangle us, and a long list of beneficial things that we can take, which can help us to untangle, the direction or the outcome of the things that we do. All right. So in this another sutta, okay, I'm not letting go. This particular picture was also shown in my other sharing as well. I just want to share this, taken from the Vibhanda Sutta, SN 12.2. Our supreme teacher, the Buddha, has given us 4 kinds of things that we tend to attach to or in the usual word is we cling on, 4 kinds of clinging. So we tend to cling on to sensual pleasures. We tend to cling on to our views. We tend to cling on to our rites and ritual. We also tend to cling on to a doctrine called self, that I exist. This is me. I'm here. So the Buddha highlighted that this 4 wrong understanding of our life itself, causes us to be tangled. So that is seeing pleasurable things as pleasant, and then holding on to a view which could be wrong, or practicing rites and ritual, thinking that these practices will lead us to liberation, to end our suffering. And then the doctrine of self, thinking that this body that I'm having right now is mine, and I'm in this body, and the body is myself. So let's look at these 4 clinging factors, how it arises, and then the last part of my sharing will be how do we, overcome this 4 clinging that is mentioned in the Vibhanga Sutta. So we all know that everything that we engage in this world happens in the mind. We think we are there engaging the phenomena, but from the Buddhist perspective, everything that happens, it starts off happening in the mind. So from this simple illustration, as a human, we have the 5 sense faculties. Okay, we have the eye, we have the ear, we have the tongue, we have the body to touch, and we have the nose to smell. So we engage the world through these 5 sense doors. And all these sense doors are connected to our mind, the thinking part of it. So the mind is the one that perceives the information that comes through this sense basis. So I think this has been explained a number of times. So we take this as the illustration. And we know that because the mind is involved in this receiving of sense stimuli from the sense organs. So actually what we experience is we are experiencing the world through the 6 sense bases. So it depends on how the mind interpret what we hear or interpret what we see. So if it's wrongly interpreting the information that comes to the mind, then we are actually living in a world which is deluded. So it's an imaginary things. It's not the reality. So the Buddha in Sabha Sutta talks about that we are living in a world which is not real. It's not the exact world that it should be. So we are just living in a perceived, deluded world that creates, the way we engage with people or engage with a situation. So understanding that the mind is the factor that determines how we see the world. So it's very important that we have to develop and cultivate the mind. So when the mind is developed and cultivated, the mind is able to see the perception much clearer. Yeah, instead of it's being filtered with a lot of deluded information. And in another sutta, the Buddha also talks about someone with a good eyesight, and he is standing near a clear river. So if the river is very clear, the eye can see, what is beneath the water. The person standing there can see the sand, the pebbles, and even fishes that are swimming, in this clear water base. So likewise, the Buddha says that if our mind is clear, the mind is able to see things in a clear sense. It won't be seeing things in a diluted form. So when the mind is clouded, or it's contaminated with mud and sand, when the water is clouded, then definitely the vision that one has to look at the water will not be exactly what it has. It will be a representation of what the eye sees at the moment. So it's very important that we have to constantly develop the mind, pay attention more to the mind rather than paying more attention to the body. So let's work, for this year try to spend a bit more time looking inwards, looking at how the mind works, looking in clarifying the mind, make it clearer and clearer, so that the things that we see and the things that we perceive will be in its true nature as far as the sense-based are concerned. Okay, so is another sutta, quite interestingly, Vipalasa Sutta, which is taken from 4.47, yeah? So here the Buddha has listed some of the distortion of the mind. As I said, the mind is where every stimuli picked up by the sense basis goes in to be processed. So when the mind is distorted in the things that it perceives, so it will start to have distorted view of what the perception is receiving. So what are the 4 things the Buddha has listed as possible distortion in the mind? All right, the Buddha says these are the 4 distortions. First is that sensing no change in the changing. So the first thing that we should know is that all things that we come in contact are changing, whether we like it or not, over time. Things that we have, or things that we possess, things that we want to keep, these things are always changing with the passing of time. But if you see this thing that is changing as not changing, then we are tangled in that, in the first reality. The reality is changing, but we are caught in non-changing. Not changing is what we are holding on, but the nature is changing. Number 2 is that we sense pleasure in suffering. So it's true that when we have, sensual desire, it does give us pleasant feeling. But what the Buddha is trying to tell us is that this pleasant feeling that we experience is not lasting. It gives you a moment of happiness, but when the pleasant feelings slowly finishes off, we will move from pleasant to unpleasant feeling. So it's actually telling us that, pleasantness is actually a sense of suffering. Okay, so there's a second distortion that we picked up in the mind. Suffering, we take it as pleasant. And the third thing is that we assume there is a self when there is actually no self. This one the Buddha has explained thoroughly in many analogy, or similes, that the body that we have right now, we take it as this is mine. I am in the body. The Buddha has explained in a number of suttas that this body that we see so physical doesn't belong to us. And the Buddha says that this body is only made up of 4 great elements. We are just purely made of 4 great elements. And these 4 great elements are borrowed from, from the Mother Earth. For example, the body contains the earth element, the fire element, the wind element, and the heat element. All these 4 great elements are naturally found, in the world itself. So it's temporarily come together to form this body. Therefore, the Buddha says that, while this body has a name, which is, in my case, is Casey, but Casey is just a label. So if we wrongly take this body to be myself, then again, is a distortion of the true nature of things. And finally, sensing unlovely as lovely. We see things as nice and beautiful, quite true, but the beauty and all that doesn't last forever. Just like, for example, in our morning puja, talk about the offering flowers through the Buddha. Now is beautiful and loved by people in a matter of time. The beautiful flowers will soon fade away. So the true nature of things that we see as lovely is truly not lovely. Yeah, so that Buddha has gone through this thoroughly. And then it's because of having this distortion and the misperception of mind, we tend to have wrong views. The wrong view arises because of the distortion in the mind. The mind perceives things wrongly. So there are 4 things that the Buddha mentioned. which perceive wrongly. So it's good that we got to straighten how the mind perceive these four things. So one of the ways is constantly reminding ourselves that everything is changing. Yeah, if we can constantly remind ourselves, things are changing, things are changing, things are not permanent. So indirectly, we are, educating or developing and cultivating a mind to see things in that true nature. Okay, and same goes with the other three misperception that distorts the mind. Okay, so usually the Buddha always uses the word Mara in the context of having wrong views or being caught by the Mara snares. Yeah, these are beauty is a Mara snare. The not beautiful is the true nature. Beauty is just something that we desire to have. All this that is things that we desire to have are actually in the realm of Mara. Yeah, so for us to go beyond, we got to reconstruct the way the mind look at things. Instead of distorted thinking, we straighten the thinking. So that's how the Buddha described in this Anguttara Nikaya 4.49. Okay, how we can regain the mind from distorted mind to a mind that is seeing things as it should truly be. So he says that for those with wisdom have heard this, referring to people who understand and try to, follow the teaching of our supreme teacher. When they hear this is the true nature of things, they regain the mind to be right. Right. So he says that for those who see change in what is changing, so we see change in what is changing, suffering in what is suffering, non-self in what is non-self, and then see the unlovely as such. So these are the people who has regained the right state of mind. All right. So you can see this is just the opposite. One part of it is distorted mind, which is seeing this in the opposite way. And there is this group of people who are wise, who see things as they truly are. So what are the things that they should see? They should see change in what is changing. So we should also see it that way, see change in what is changing, suffering in what is suffering, okay, non-self in what is without self, and see the unlovely as such. So these are the four things that we constantly got tangled. Yeah, we are tangled in these four things. So the whole process of untangling is to move to this side of the mind, that's regain the mind to see the true nature of things. So by having this, then we will have the right view. So once you have the right view, then definitely it will correct the way we behave, right? And that leads to overcoming all forms of suffering. So let us now quickly look at the whole development of cleaning. How do we start off having this cleaning process, and how do we get attached to things which are wrong? So in the context of the Buddha's teaching, so you all start with having this body. The body comes with our sense bases, which I've already said. We have this 5 sense bases. With the mind, there are 6 total in in the Buddha's teaching. So the sense basis is where the stimuli is received by our sense base. So there is a contact. Sense base leads to having a contact. And then a contact, because there's a contact with a stimuli, feeling arises. So this is something that we cannot stop. Yeah, the body comes with a sense base, so it's part of us. So because of a sense base, there is contact. It's also part of us, and the contact generates feeling. So it's also part of the whole processes. You cannot stop that, yeah. And then from feeling, because we have this liking and disliking of what the feeling generates, and over time, the liking of something gradually becomes the habit, which in this word is referred to as craving. the craving, wanting to, because you enjoy something and you want to enjoy it again and again and again. So over time, it becomes a habitual behavior. So it becomes part of the craving. So in Buddhist, the Buddha always advised us not to develop habits which are harmful. You know, the set that I've shown earlier, there's one set of behaviors which are harmful and the other set of behaviors which are beneficial. So the Buddha says, try to put effort and develop more beneficial habits rather than developing more more harmful habits. So that's the thing. The feeling arises, something that you want, and the wanting is the craving. The nature arises through craving. And then from the craving, when you repeatedly do it, then it becomes clinging. So when you don't have it, you feel remorseful or you become sad, So these are the general thing that we need to be aware as, we go through our daily life practices. So look out for the contact, look out for the feeling that arises from the contact, and then try to develop more beneficial habits, and then try to reduce as much as possible the harmful habits that we acquire. Again, this is taken for the Vibhanga Sutta, Ascent 12.2. Okay, so I want to just bring you to another short sutta. This is taken from Anguttara Nikaya 10.58, Mulaka Sutta. There are 10 questions where the Buddha teaches all the monks, if they are engaged by practitioners of other religion during the Buddha's time. So if they ask questions, so this is how you answer. I've taken 4 out of the 10 questions to highlight, that this sutta and the earlier sutta are all interlinked. So if someone asks you, in what friends are all things rooted? So all things are rooted in desire. So the wanting, the desire that we have, again, that is also highlighted in the 4 clinging that I mentioned earlier. So desire seems to be a very strong force in all of us. We can't run away from it. The moment you have this body, there is this desire, wanting something, pleasurable things, wanting to live on, or wanting not to live on. So all these are a sense of rooted desires. And then through what do they come into being? So you can see here, the Buddha says that they all come into being through attention, which is also mentioned in my earlier intro to the harmful and beneficial behaviors. Right? Callous attention versus careful attention. So you can see attention is the reason why desire comes in. So when there is a contact with external stimuli, so it depends a lot on what kind of attention is put into it. So if you have put in a lot of callous attention, definitely you'll be drawn towards wanting the desire. You're wanting more of it. If you have careful attention, looking at this desire and say, this desire that I'm chasing can bring me more harm. All right. So you're applying careful attention, analyzing this desire that arises in our mind. And then we say, if this desire is going to bring us more harm, I should not be doing it. So we are applying careful attention. So from here, from what do they originate is through the contact. When there's contact, there is desire, and it's up to us to apply the careful attention or callous attention. And then from the contact, as I explained, they converge upon feeling. The feeling comes about. So you can see from this short Dhamma's discussion this morning, talking about tangle, the way we are tangled, and the way to untangle. So what is the way to untangle? So the Buddha talks a little bit about this untanglement. So you can see from my other discussion, I have always emphasized on mindfulness. So the Buddha says this in Anguttara Nikaya 1.586. So when one thing, bhikkhu, is developed and cultivated, so we're just going to develop this one thing. Ignorance is given up. Okay, knowledge arises and the conceit I am, believing that I exist in this body, will also be given up. So the underlying tendencies are uprooted. So these are all the, our 5 or the 3 evil roots that is rooted in us, that can be given up, and the factors are given up as well. So what is that one thing? And then the Buddha says is the mindfulness of the body. Constantly be mindful the moment you wake up, knowing how aware are we in the state of the mind that we have at the moment. So when we can develop the awareness of our body on a constant basis, so that will be aware of what we intend to do. So, so I encourage from this Dhamma sharing, there is a need for us to develop mindfulness of the body. So be mindful if we can. Most of the time, mindful of the body, mindful of our thinking, mindful of our speech. And at the same time, be mindful of how we dispose this body in our day-to-day activities. So periodically when we are not using our body to do anything, one of the easiest mindfulness object that we can use is our breath. Yeah, that's why taking note of our breath from time to time, that we are breathing in, we are breathing out. This is one way of keeping the mind at the present moment, mindful of the body. So we know we are breathing in, we know we are breathing out. So if you find that breathing in, breathing out is something that you find it not interesting to do, you might want to use something to keep the mind busy by using a mantra. Yeah, keep the mind busy by chanting Namo Tassa, or even in some Thai tradition, they will use the word Buddho, Buddho, Buddho as a way. So keep the mind occupied by, by chanting a short mantra, so that mind is always engaged at the present moment, but not leaving the mind to run to the past or to the future, to prevent the mind from thinking too much. That's one of the usefulness of mindfulness. Okay, so that's it. So as a conclusion, the Buddha has shown us the way to break the chain. So it's up to us. The Buddha's teaching is, the Buddha gave us the way, then we got to walk it ourselves. So the effort to walk the middle path, to develop and cultivate good qualities, to untangle, tangle, to freedom, is something that all of us must do. So like the silkworm, it only takes a mindset shift. So it's just mindset shifting, shifting from habits of harmfulness to the habit of beneficial. So we can stop the spinning and avoid bitter life, the life bitter end. Okay, so my closing remark is that let's not spin in this cocoon for the rest of our many, many more life. Yeah, so with that, brothers and sisters, thank you very much for spending some time with me on this morning's Dhamma sharing. I'll pass the control back to Brother Terence. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Brother Casey, for today's sharing. It reminds me of the saying that Bhante Akaliko told us, that we should refrain from all the bananas hanging, dangling in front of us. Okay, this morning we have spent some time participating in the puja and listening to Brother Casey's Dhamma sharing. With that, we have accrued some wholesome merits. So now let us dedicate those merits to all beings, whether they are seen or unseen, especially some Dhamma friends who have just recently passed away, Sister Esther and Sister Mengsi's mother. Now let us compose our minds as I chant the dedication of merits. Akasata Jabummata Devanaga Mahitika Punyang Tam Anumoditva Chiram Rakkantu Lokasasanang Etta Wata Amhehi Sampadang Punya Sampadang Sabbe Deva, Sabbe Bhuta, Sabbe Sattva Anumodantu, Sabba Sampatti Siddhya. Idang me nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyachayo. Idang me nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyachayo. Idang me nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyachayo. Imina punya kammena mame bala samagamo satang samagamo hotu yavani panapatiya. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you everyone for watching and staying back. For other videos, please visit the links below. Bye-bye for now. See you all again next week.